pulling up my notes so that I can talk in a normal fashion. Today I am going to be doing a review of a book that I just finished, Fire and Flood by Victoria Scott. Here it is. I read it on my Kindle. I've been reading a lot on my Kindle lately just because I have the Kindle app on my phone and it's so much more convenient than lugging around an actual book. I just finished Fire and Flood by Victoria Scott last night, and I've already started the sequels. I will start off with a little summary of the book, as I often forget to do that. Fire and Flood is about this girl, Tella, who has a very sick brother, and her family moves to Montana, and she's really upset. She has nothing to do. It's really boring. And then one day she finds a box in her room, and it has this device that tells her about this competition called the Brimstone Bleed, which will grant a cure for any disease to the one winner of the race. So she's like, well, my brother's dying and I need to go save him. So there's this race, basically. It's called the Brimstone Bleed, and each contestant has a Pandora with them, which is an animal companion that can help them. They have like superpowers, so they can help them through their different terrains, because the race takes place over a jungle, a desert, a mountain, and the ocean. So the animal companions are supposed to help them survive so that they can win this cure for their sick family members. But of course, everything is not what it seems. Main character Tella, Tella. So she's a 16-year-old girl. You can really tell, like, reading these young adult books, like, how young these characters are and how immature they are. So Tella was one of those characters where I'm like, I just want to punch her in the head because she makes dumb decisions. But in a way, it's kind of endearing, because she'll be going through and she'll be, like, she's really obsessed with, like, makeup and hair, and so she's in the middle of the woods, like, being eaten alive by, like, fire ants or something, and she's like, you know, I really wish that I were at Nordstrom right now. That was kind of annoying at first, but then once you got used to it, you're like, oh, Tella, good point, because I would rather be anywhere than in that jungle right now. Tella was was often focused on the wrong things, but in a way it was like her stream of conscious. Like at one point she's like, oh, you know, this should be a piece of cake. Cheesecake. And then and that made me laugh, because obviously like that's how your brain goes. Like you want to distract yourself from what you're doing, but at the same time you need to stay focused. So I feel like she had a little bit of a problem with staying focused, but it made sense because I remembered she's a 16-year-old girl. So that didn't bother me that much once I got accustomed to the fact that this is a 16-year-old girl. Obviously, she's not used to survival. She's not Katniss Everdeen. Which brings me to my next point. A lot of people complain that this book is like a copy of The Hunger Games, except for worse. Which, there are some similarities. There are lots of similarities. But it is different enough that it's not, like, I wouldn't say that it's a copy of The Hunger Games. I would say that it has similar elements to The Hunger Games, because a lot of books published around the same time do. This is a spoiler, so I'm gonna hold up the Kindle, and then when I put it down, you can unmute so that you can hear again, but this is gonna be the sign for I'm spoiling something. So basically, at the end of this story, Tella is fighting with the psychopath main killer character, Titus. And Titus, they're on a rock formation. And it was just like the exact scene of Cato and Katniss fighting on top of the cornucopia, except for Peeta wasn't there. Basically, they're just on this formation, fighting each other, and then he falls to his death. But I have a theory about that, because I'm pretty sure that in the second book, bigger spoiler, I'll put up my hand until this one's over. I'm pretty sure that in the second book he's coming back to life, because there's this new character and she's like, oh, I would have remembered seeing him before, and he has black hair dye and his eyebrows are blonde, and that was the color of Titus's hair, and he's acting like Titus, and I'm pretty sure that it's Titus. But anyway. So yeah, they're fighting on this formation, and that definitely was reminiscent of The Hunger Games and the scene with Cato at the cornucopia. Just sitting there and I'm like, this is too eerily similar. This can't be a coincidence. Anyway, so with those couple of similarities, like she has a sick sibling, there's an arena where there's a bunch of competitors, but they're not trying to kill each other, so, I mean, there's a little bit of difference there. But once I separated the two, I was like, okay, you know what, just pretend that you didn't read The Hunger Games and like treat this as its own separate book, then it was fine. I was a huge fan of the pacing of this book. I know that this is something that I talk about a lot with books. I like the way that they're paced, but I mean, it's a thing. That's one of the things that I look for, is if a book is too slow, I will not be interested at all. So this was like a super fast-paced book, but it also, there was enough like intrigue, like there was enough mystery and like putting pieces together that it made me want to keep reading, not just because it was fast-paced. For instance, finding out the abilities of the Pandoras, that took a little bit of time, but like I kept waiting for us to find out like what they were gonna do, so that was exciting. Then there's a point where Tella is getting told the story behind the Brimstone Bleed. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but she's getting told the story, and it's being told in chunks, so like you just keep waiting to figure out like what the end of this story is. That was really fun to follow. More good thing, there was a character named Jackson in the second half of the first book, and I loved him. I love him so much. I love him. He's supposed to be like annoying, and like the one character really doesn't like him, but like I love him. Another little spoilery part. Spoiler. Dink totally saw that he was going to be a Pandora. Like, I was like, okay, Caroline and Dink lost their Pandoras. He lost his device. I mean, yes, he's pretty young, but like, you should be more responsible than that. And then he's acting all weird, and I'm like, wait a minute. Caroline keeps him so close. Maybe he's a Pandora. And then wouldn't you know that he is. And that scene was creepy as hell. Oh my god. I almost had nightmares from that. Like, it was terrifying. I felt like the Pandoras could have had more of a presence in the book. I kind of forgot that they were there until they were like mentioned. I was like, oh yeah, there's an eagle, or oh yeah, we have that jaguar. So I'm sitting there like, okay, I know that Maddox is there because the main character is always talking about Maddox, but I always forget that the other Pandoras are there because like they aren't mentioned until they do something, which was kind of sad because they were one of my favorite parts of the book, and they were just kind of ignored. So the character is named Guy. Why? Why would you name a character Guy? I hate that name. But, I mean, that's a little thing. I guess, like, Guy. Honestly, Guy. I hate that name. He's a total jerk to the main character, and I don't want to deal with that. So I kind of hate Guy. Mostly because of his name, and somewhat because of the way he acts. Also, all the characters in this story are blonde. Like, there's a ridiculous amount of blonde-haired characters in this book. There is a case of insta-love, but it gets complicated. Insta-love, but like, I don't get that annoyed by insta-love. I don't know. It's a 16-year-old girl, once again. Like, obviously, she's gonna be separated from everyone, and then there's this hot guy telling her to take off her clothes. Like, what's she supposed to do? Not fall in love with him? Wait. Sounds much creepier when you're talking about it like that, but I think that's about it. I gave this book 4 stars out of 5, and I'm reading the second one right now. I'm about 80 pages into it. Liking the second book a little bit more just because it's not the first book. You already know the world and the characters, and now it can get complex. But like in the second book, and it's a final book, it's a duology, so there's only 2. That is all I have for you guys today. Like this video if you like it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will be back with another video at some point. Bye! Okay. So I